Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to pause it actually because we haven't got any attendees yet.
Oh, there's one.
What I'll do is I'll just wait a moment. Hi, Fiona. Hi, Pamela. We're just going to wait for a few more people to come through before we get started. Morning, Anil. Thanks for taking the time to come through this morning. As I mentioned, we'll just give it a couple of minutes before we get started. Hi, David. Nice to see you. I'm just going to give it a couple of more minutes before we kick off, just to wait for any more attendees to arrive. Whilst we're waiting, thanks for taking the time this morning, Sian and Andy. Looking forward to having this conversation. You know, we've had a few chats, particularly you and I, Sian, over the last few weeks. So I'm looking forward to sharing this story with the group. So I think what I'll do is we'll just get started now, and as hopefully some more people come along, and we can welcome them in as well. So welcome everybody to today's Facebook video podcast through the Property for Good group, in association with Cornerstone Place. We're doing these podcasts every second and fourth Friday of the month now, and it's very much focused around everything to do with the supported living sector. And the aim of the group is, the aim of these podcasts is to give you insight into different activities that people are doing. You know, introduce you maybe if you don't already have those relationships with people working within the sector, and perhaps if you're working within the sector, introduce you to some of the investment activities that people are doing. So it's kind of a really broad mix. And the most important thing really is we're not here to sell anything. All we're here is to make introductions and to share information. So in today's podcast, I'm going to give you a very quick update about my business, Cornerstone Place, which is a social enterprise. I'm going to run the poll again that we run it every time, and then more importantly, I want to spend a decent amount of time, the lion's share of the time, chatting to Sian and Andy, and then we'll have a quick Q&A, and then we'll move on to just let you know a bit more about the next event. So Cornerstone Place is a social enterprise I set up with another chap, Richard Kennedy, about 18 months ago now, and we're a property development social enterprise which is dedicated to ending street homelessness. And the way we're going to do that is by supporting homelessness charities. So we're bringing funded property solutions to charities, and we have a unique model which enables them to share in some of the upside of the ownership. And throughout the coronavirus shutdown, obviously that's been quite challenging, but I don't think it's any surprise to anybody to hear that we expect that to go up in terms of the number of people that are on the street. So we expect, unfortunately, the level of demand to increase. And we've got three key projects that we're working on at the moment. One is a site in Banbury, which is this one here. We're going into planning for this one. It will eventually be 16 units and 2 offices. That's going into planning on Monday. We've had a little bit of to and fro with some of the reporting, but that's ploughing on. Our other site up in Manchester in Tameside, we're in legals with that one. We've had ridiculous amounts of legal paperwork produced now, and that's gone off, so that's pushing forward. And we've had our indicative terms from our lender, which is all good news. And then this one in the middle, this is actually a site in London, which a charity that we're working with, a national charity that we're working with, has. They've engaged with us to provide support for them up in Manchester in terms of locating sites. And as of a meeting yesterday, I think we found them a site, and they're pushing it forward through their board. So that's really exciting. So that's just a quick minute run through of what we're up to within Cornerstone Place. It's absolutely pushing in the right direction, and it's enormously exciting and rewarding. And there's a lot more to come. Right, let me just quickly run the poll, which we run each time, and it's to get a feel for who's on the call. So the question is, how involved are you in the supported living sector currently? And you can do multiple choices. So if you could just click in the appropriate section, please.
I was trying to vote then, it won't let me.
Okay, I think we're about there. Okay, interesting. So I'm just going to end this poll and then share the results with you. This is a little bit different to what we've seen previously, insofar as that most of the people are sort of not yet started and they're interested in the sector. And I think the two guests that we've got on the call today are going to help you on that journey, because they come from different angles in terms of the approach. But it's certainly something that I think is going to add value to you. And then obviously somebody else there is an investor, and obviously just looking for some advice on it. So thank you for that. I think you're in the right place today in terms of being able to help you on your journey, wherever you sit within those sort of the process through acting in the supported living sector. So let's just close that off. Right, now let's dive into the main part of the meeting today. What I'm going to do is just, if I pause my sharing. And what I'd like to do, Mark is, you'll see a picture of Mark Stokes there. He's been called away, unfortunately, but that's okay. What I'd like to do is introduce Sian and Andy. Sian, it's fair to say, is coming from, well, Sian's coming from the sort of the property investment angle initially, but has come across the support for veterans, which has sort of lit a fire in her belly to really drive things forward. And Andy, I won't steal his thunder in terms, well, I can't steal his thunder in terms of him explaining his own background, but it comes from a services background, come from working in the forces, then into business, and more recently looking after homeless ex-veterans. So I think what I'd like to do to start off with, Sian, maybe if you could just explain a little bit about your sort of background, property background as well, and then how you've come to sort of focus on the homelessness sector, and then more specifically the veteran sector. If you could maybe share that with us first, please.
So so I have a background in nursing originally. I've done 25 years in the NHS and specialised within intensive care in that area. But I've always had an interest in property alongside that, and it kind of, I was exposed to property at quite an early age actually, and I've got my entrepreneurial mum to thank for that, and she was kind of the least conventional vicar's wife around, and she was flipping properties in the 80s before it became really popular. And she'd take me on site visits, and I remember kind of looking the ins and outs of what she was doing, and I think that probably started my interest in property really. But you know, as usual, life takes over, and I started doing nursing, and I was quite career driven within my nursing career, and I didn't actually get back into property until 2003. And I bought my first investment property in 2003. And then over the next 12 years, kind of did some smaller projects, property projects alongside nursing, more of a hobby really. And
2003 to 2008 was quite a good wave to ride, wasn't it, in the property sector?
It was, although I didn't ride it as well as I should have done in hindsight. So started off well, and then kind of, like I say, was a bit focused on nursing, and so didn't really do it as efficiently as I could have done. But I enjoyed it. You know, I've always enjoyed pootling around in property, so it was fine. And my kids came along in that time as well, so that sort of really took my focus as well. And then it was about 2015 that you know, that I really decided that I wanted to leave nursing as a full-time job and focus on property. So that's when I kind of stepped it up and did various different strategies and managed to build my portfolio to kind of replace my nursing income so I could actually leave my job. So I left my job in 2017.
The much vaunted financial freedom.
Partial. enough to leave my nursing job. So
Yeah,
my
fair
husband
enough.
still worked.
Okay.
Yeah, and I kind of focused on BRR mainly, but also did a couple of flips, an HMO, and even a small commercial conversion snuck in there as well.
Sean, just in case people aren't aware, just tell us a bit about the BRR.
Buy, refurbish, refinance. So it's a buy to let effectively, but you're trying to add value and trying to take on the refinance. You try and take as much money out of the deal as you can, and it just helps to grow your portfolio because then you can reinvest it in subsequent projects. Yeah, so alongside doing all these projects, I also did some top quality property education with a couple called Joe and Jane Harling from Bristol.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And they're pretty credible in the property fields. They specialise in commercial conversions, but they've got 60 years, I think, collectively. So they've done everything. So that sort of consolidated my property journey, and I feel like I got really good broad property education from them as well.
So about 18 months or so ago, there was a bit of a shift, wasn't there, in terms of your the direction. So up until now, up until that point, obviously, it had been renting out to the open market. But then all of a sudden, a shift happened, didn't it? So talk us through that, please.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I didn't know anything about supported living at all, but I've kind of got this inner need to try and exact change in whatever I do and trying to feel like I'm doing good anyway. But it was during one of my workshops on my mentorship program that I met Sarah Walker. I don't know if you've come across her, but she is just
tell us a bit more about her.
Yeah, she's worked in the social housing and supported living world for 30 plus years at a really kind of high up top level. And she was doing a workshop on this mentorship. So she was telling us all the ins and outs of the practical side of social housing and supported living, which kind of scrambled my brain a little bit. But she also she's done a pilot project with her local authority where she kind of set up a supported housing project for care leavers. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that you could do that, and that was a thing. And then it sort of just, the penny dropped that perhaps I could use that to supported living to kind of reconcile my need to do good and my love of property, and I just felt that they really gelled really well together.
Yep.
So and then around that time I met my business partner at a SaaS networking event that I run, and we had a sort of an immediate alignment with our values and desire to create this social impact. And and we were really excited when I told her that we could use property to do that. And so
it's funny because it's almost a carbon copy of my own experience, because Richard, my business partner, he's got 13 years working in the social sector, and just as we were getting started, we were hoping to try and close something in Swindon, and we got a yes from the charity, and it didn't happen in the end for various reasons. But I can vividly remember, I think we were sitting in a subway or something, we were chatting, I said to Richard, this is brilliant, and he just said, welcome to the third sector. And it's like this little light bulb came on, thinking, what have I been doing for the last 46 years or whatever it was? Because it gives a whole different, and I think a sustainable reason to really want to get out of bed in the morning and crack on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It's a real sort of purpose and a drive in my life anyway. It really is.
So sorry, I cut across you a little bit there. So you were realizing you were
so we that's when we went about forming Bridgehead Homes and starting to try and break into the sector. So which is obviously easier said than done, but and that we were really fortunate. I cold called Andy one day, didn't I, Andy? And he an hour later we were kind of sat in his office having a cup of tea, and discussing housing. But it was, we were really fortunate we were looking for a partner who we could align our values with. And
so why Healthier Heroes? Why pick up the phone to Andy rather than, I don't know, any number of other charities that are out there?
Well, I mean, when we started looking, we were, we weren't focused on homelessness at all. We were really just trying to find partners, like I say, who we could align our values with. The relationship was more important than the sector. So,
okay.
We didn't know immediately because we'd not met Andy, but as soon as we did meet, we kind of clicked effectively and realized that we had the sort of same social values. And then it was very soon, once we saw how Andy worked and Healthier Heroes worked and all the amazing stuff they were doing with the veterans, we developed our own passion for the veterans and the homeless sector. And so whereas we didn't kind of search specifically to work with homelessness or veterans initially, that's kind of how we got into it.
Okay. And I think that's a good time to bring Andy into the conversation. So, hi Andy, how are you doing? I think you're on mute, actually.
Yeah, thank
you. There we go. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. So, Andy, could you give us a walkthrough of your sort of leaving school to now sitting here and running Healthier Heroes, please, just to give everybody a background, because it's quite the story and it's quite the path. So it'd be lovely if you could share that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it'd be an absolute pleasure. So grew up in quite a deprived background in Lancashire. But obviously before that, my dad was in the military, and we ended up moving back home from Germany back to Burnley. A young child of about 3 years old, homeless at that time, so I was living with grandparents, and then so we got brought up in a deprived area of Burnley in Lancashire. So with that, obviously, came a lot of poverty, and I didn't have very much as a child growing up. My mum tried her absolute best, and she really did, and she's absolutely amazing. And then obviously, as life kind of progressed, I then fell into kind of that environment of not like crime as such, but antisocial behaviour and not really engaging with school, just being that little runt, for a better word, not doing what I should have been doing, which didn't set me up for life at all. Obviously, I went through school. I ended up leaving school at the age of 14, and the main reason for that was my then stepfather at the time, who was married to my mum for quite a long period of time, was victim to a lot of domestic violence from my dad, and as was I and my brother. Nice. And it resulted in me witnessing something one day which, basically resulted in me having to leaving the house at 14 years old and being homeless again. Wow. For about, I think it was about 2 weeks, until I actually, at 14, thought I need a bed. So I
like the way that it took 2 weeks to get to that priority point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so I might get a bit emotional as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So
no, understood.
Sometimes
I get it.
So so then I went to live with family at the age of 14. I never finished school. No GCSEs, absolutely nothing whatsoever. Back in them day, I sort of kind of went to school with my uniform on, done the obligatory name and number and all that kind of stuff on my exams, and then walked out. So I had nothing. I then joined the army at 16. I had an absolute amazing career throughout my 16-year career, having left in 2013. I hit some real goals and high points throughout my career. I was the youngest corporal in the British Army when I got promoted. I was then the youngest sergeant in the British Army when I got promoted. And then I left as a colour sergeant, like I say, in 2013 . So my time in the military... Pardon?
Which regiment, Andy?
So it was the Queen's Lancashire Regiment right at the start when I first joined, and then obviously there was a big shift in the military, and then we kind of regiments amalgamated, and it became the Duke of Lancaster's Regiment in 2006.
And you did a few tours, didn't you?
Yeah. So I've done a number of tours of Iraq, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland, Germany, been to Canada. Poland, so I've kind of travelled the world and done my bits and pieces. Been involved in obviously quite a number of the wars, and which obviously the military went to. So I've seen quite a lot.
Yeah.
So in terms of that mental health piece, it didn't help because in 2012, which was my last tour of Afghanistan, 2000 Herrick 17, it was called. It was quite a hectic tour, of which was meant to be pretty relaxed because we was kind of in that transition of the British military leaving Afghanistan and handing over to the the Afghanistan police and the army, but it didn't quite turn out like that. So yeah, it was quite chaotic, and then sort of combined with that, I then came back and found out my wife was having an affair for a year. So my family
not ideal. Look, and in a, I've said it before, but for what it's worth, I suppose, in a sort of semi-public forum like this, I'm grateful for your service. I really am. And all your mates that you've served with. It's important. And there's only so much you can really say for someone who's not really experienced. Well, I haven't experienced any of that, and you can imagine, but you can't at the same time, I'm sure.
Yeah, so, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
So
my life fell apart really in 2012. I lost my family, lost my wife, and kind of then fell into back where I was when I was a child. Really, still serving in the military. Left in 2013, but I sort of turned to the drink, became a little bit off the rails. I got involved in a lot of antisocial behaviour, a lot of police involvement, and it weren't looking too good for me. For want of a better word, if I continued doing what I was doing, then there would no doubt I would probably end up in jail. And I like to be completely honest and frank with people so they kind of understand who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And it was only my good mother of mine who put me on the right path, because she literally whacked me around the back of the head with a slipper one day and said, "Sort your life out."
Yeah.
So I did.
Okay.
How
old were you at this stage?
When my mum whacked me around the head?
Yeah.
Gosh, how old was I? Well, it was in 2012 and I'm now 39, so
32. So 32.
32 years old.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It's good to know that mums still have that that option available to them, even to a grown man. Yeah.
If you were to see my mum, she's only about 5'4", and she always says if she ever has to say out to me, she has to stand on a pedestal. But the powers of an angry mum with a slipper.
Yeah.
It was great.
So then you moved across into business, really, didn't you?
Well, not initially. So what I then first did was I vowed never to go back to the Middle East ever again. So, and that's exactly what I did do, unfortunately. But I was a close protection officer, kind of a bodyguard, for a better word, in Iraq. So I was looking after high-ranking people within the oil and gas sector, sort of protecting them, doing what they were doing on their normal daily life. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a number of years, which was really good. Give me a lot of experience and kind of put me back into that fold of being within the military environment again, and back with like-minded people, having that banter, because many soldiers struggle coming out of the military into Civvy Street in terms of that transition. Sure. So it kind of gave me a bit of an head start. I did that for a while, and then I went into working with a educational based company in Liverpool. And I became the sales director for them, and kind of grew that business from relatively small to quite large, and then kind of that gave me a bit of a spur then to go into business. So then I then moved to Manchester, and I had a large PPI company as a sales director with another business partner of mine. So we kind of looked after about 280 staff. And we did what we did in terms of the PPI piece. Don't shoot me, because I was trying to help again.
It was you, Andy.
Yes, it was me,
right.
Amongst others. But probably did have a call from our staff at one point. But if you didn't make that claim, then it's your fault, not mine. So I did that, and obviously PPI was coming to an end. So I then set up my own educational-based company. So I was looking to work with disengaged children in schools, kind of that very same child that I was going through education, who wasn't getting anywhere, antisocial behaviour, involved in crime, not engaging in the education system, So we developed our own curriculum
Right.
to work with those children and young people to raise attainment and build resilience, confidence, self-esteem, leadership, development, a massive plethora of sort of programs, which is still running now. And that was set up in 2016, 2017.
Okay, great.
And that, and as I say, that's still running now. And I kind of fell into this position that I'm in currently because my business partner and I who's Laura Ingham, was working from the building that we're in right now, delivering a health and wellbeing program for the Armed Forces HQ in Wigan.
Okay.
Certain things happened within that, and the people who was running it then left, and me and Laura was then asked to come in and kind of pick it up really and make it work. And I ain't going to take the credit for that. I kind of handed that piece over to Laura, and she ran with it, and it's just literally absolutely flew off the wall.
Brilliant.
In terms of our results and outcomes. So she's concentrated on the strategic level development of the company, and I've concentrated on the operational side of it.
Just quickly, that David Johns, who's one of the attendees today, he just put a note in the chat box. Big respect, Andy, for turning your life around and doing great things you do now.
Thanks very much, David. Much appreciated, mate. Thank you.
So just coming back to the work that you and Laura have been doing then. So one of the key words that is you hear time and time again in the sector is outcomes, isn't it? It's about, someone comes through that door, you've no idea what they've been through or what challenges they're having. And you've no idea, I'll go back to the first guest that we had on this podcast, which was Claire from Homeless Oxfordshire, obviously a homelessness charity in just down the road from me. And she says sometimes for some people, just getting out of bed and making breakfast in the morning is a big tick in the box. But she has in her mind the pathway of trying, and it's going to be a journey like that, isn't it? But trying to help someone get themselves back on their feet again. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit, please, about some of the outcomes that you work towards, about some of the people that you're looking after, specifically, I think, to do with, veterans, and just talk a little bit about the sort of the activities that you're doing within Healthier Heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of, we say we're a one-stop shop. So when it comes to the outcomes are very much driven by the individuals. So, each case, each person, each beneficiary that comes in, it's very, very different, and everything that we do has got to be bespoke to each individual. So we have a kind of a number of pathways to help them get to wherever they need to be and fulfill their dreams and become the person that they need to be.
Yeah.
But the outcomes are driven around reduction of homelessness. Mm-hmm. So providing that supported housing, but whilst providing that supported housing, it's then providing that wraparound care package that each individual needs as well. So it could be drug and alcohol addiction, gambling awareness, money management, education, employment or training. And the list is absolutely endless to be honest, because...
Do you find there are common ones? Sorry, Andy, but do you find there are common ones that people need support on time and time again in terms of different areas?
Homelessness, drug and alcohol addiction.
Yeah,
that's our biggest and mental health. Is a huge thing for us. So yeah, I mean they could walk through this door and ask for help to fill out a passport form to getting a house or getting a job. Actually we will literally bend over backwards to do whatever we can to assist where necessary, because fundamentally for some people filling out a passport form is so stressful. It's absolutely ridiculous. Or even ringing a doctor is so stressful that they don't do it. Yeah, so we will do absolutely anything. So we have other activities. So it's not just about that piece of working with them in education, employment, training, housing, and the other pieces. We think it's important that we engage them with other activities. So we utilise veterans retreats, horse therapy, fishing clubs. We set up it's got kind of social enterprise business as well, which is called Healthier Heroes. So that brings veterans in who have got a lot of trades, because ordinarily it takes about 10 years for a veteran to come for help, really. They've been through that journey of crisis point. Yeah. Wow. About 10 years it is. So they've probably done a bit in their time and then lost a lot as well. So we bring all that piece together and create a community group where they go out and help the communities and fix gates and do some gardening and paint some fences and do some decorating and, you know, do little bits and pieces like that. So providing the service back to the community, but engaging those veterans to help reduction of social isolation as well, which in turn is going to put them back in the fold with other veterans, back in that environment of a military environment, and then getting them out doing something and giving back as well.
Yeah, and that's all got to help with the self-esteem and self-confidence, and you know, like you say, the mental health challenges that sit around.
Yeah, absolutely, of course it is. Yeah.
So, you know, obviously the group here is Property for Good, and I'd like to just ask you, Sian, and Andy, let's talk a little bit about the relationship between the two of you, and you know how that we understand how it formed. Obviously, you picked up the phone, Sian, but what sort of activities have you done so far, and what sort of things are in the pipeline now, and what's the vision? So maybe, Sian, you could just explain a little bit about the stuff that you've done so far.
Yeah. So when we first connected, we had our kind of first meeting, and we're kind of discussing the needs of you know, the veterans within Wigan initially. Andy sort of mentioned there was a need for emergency housing, sort of on a shared accommodation basis. So tier 1 housing, you call it, don't you, Andy? Where it's designed to kind of get the veterans off the streets and into a place where they can be secure and safe and kind of stabilise and be in an area where they can receive the support that Andy was just talking about, to help them, you know, get back on their feet, really. So we did a few of those in Wigan, and they're all completed. And
what sort of properties were they? Just like flats, apartments, or
no? They were small HMOs, effectively. So 3 and 4 beds, really small, purposefully kept small because there were a couple of unscrupulous landlords in Wigan that, to say the least, that had cottoned on to the whole fact that you could get the enhanced rates for veterans,
which of course is normally used for the services, isn't it?
Exactly. So that's designed partially for the rent, and then the rest of it's to go towards the support. And only what they were doing was they were taking these veterans, putting them in large kind of 12-bed, you know, HMOs that were not fit for purpose, pretty, you know, horrible places, and taking the money but providing, you know, very little support. So actually, I think what Andy did was literally remove those veterans from that environment and rehouse them in our houses. So rescue them effectively, I think, from an awful situation. So that was our initial kind of project. But then Andy, sort of being a Burnley lad, I mean, he was like, right, okay, let's move to Burnley, and has had this most amazing vision for headquarters in Burnley, sort of replicating this fantastic, you know, HQ that they've done in Wigan, but over in Lancashire. And I'll let Andy tell you about it because I won't do it justice. But basically, the vision for this is phenomenal. So I'll let
over to you, Andy.
Okay. So honestly, I mean, and you've got to see the pictures. I hope everyone's seen the picture from the outside, and that kind of don't do it justice in itself as well. So that building's over 4 floors. It's got the capacity it's got 25 bedrooms in it, so we've got the capacity to house a number of homeless veterans, vulnerable veterans, or those leaving the criminal justice system. So Sian kind of alluded to there, what we're doing within that property is creating a tiered housing system. So tiered 1 housing is they'll come through the door either as a self-referral or a professional referral, having been street homeless or requiring some form of accommodation. And ordinarily, if they're moving into tier 1, then they've got drug and alcohol addictions or a plethora of mental health issues as well. So we house them within that.
So this is as vulnerable as they get, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
And sorry, Andy, what sort of age range, and is it generally only males, or is it some females as well?
It's generally males. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a number of years now, and I've come across homeless females, but none of which require accommodation because they tend to get looked after more by the families. Your mum brings them in under their roof and whatnot. And blokes are a little bit more. They go a little bit more renegade. Let's well, for a better word,
Okay.
as I did. So the age range absolutely differs, and I would probably put a like 24 to 30, 35.
Okay.
What we'll be looking at. So I always use the analogy of an heroin addict, for a better word, coming through that door, street homeless, drug, alcohol addiction, mental health issues, and we can work with them for as long as is absolutely necessary. So there is no time frame, but there is a move on. That's the important thing. They've got to be able to move on and not just remain stagnant.
Yeah.
So if we're working with them for a year, in that year we've hopefully got them off their drugs misuse and onto a script, and then they move from tier 1 into tier 2, which then is basically like little flats within the building, and they get a little bit less support from us, but they're still under the same roof, so we have that tap into them. But while they're going through that next process and that next journey, we then start enabling them to look at employment and opportunities, training opportunities, volunteering opportunities as well, with the emphasis then to come off their script of methadone to then be free from any sort of prescription medication or whatever it is. And once that's done, again, I just use 6 months as an example, if that's what it takes. Within that 6 months, we then identified potential employment opportunities for them, and then when the time's right and they're ready, then they move out into tier 3 support, which is somewhere that they are then living fully independently.
So that could just be like a 1-bed apartment or something.
Yeah, absolutely, and it can be anywhere that they want to then to move to. So fully independent living, financial stability. And now a positive role model of their now new community or existing community that they were in before, and able to give back and provide something that they couldn't do historically. But they then leave with a membership, so that membership enables them to come back at any point and reach out, because we know you mentioned before, Dave, about your first podcast with that lady was saying that the journey's up and down, and it'll continue to do that. It will.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's what an amazing facility. I mean, really. Do you have a view on the number of people that you're going to impact over, say, the course of a year? I mean, there's 25 rooms, but obviously there's going to be churn in there, isn't there? And some people will come in and maybe 2 weeks later go back out again because they're just not ready to, because unfortunately I have some experience of dealing with alcoholism within my own family, and it's not down to anybody around them, is it? It's when that person is ready to deal with their own issues and challenges. But do you have a view on how it might work?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah, and we've kind of faced it here in Wigan with the properties that we've got now. But I am very much in the. A veteran will come in, and regardless of their drug or alcohol addictions or mental health, they'll not leave. And that's not me putting them in a straitjacket or whatever. Or that certainly isn't me kicking them out either. I don't care how complex, how difficult each individual person is. We're there to provide a service, and we're there to get them better. I've been down that road and know how important it is. So it's important for us to have the staff in there as well that have lived experiences that can engage with them and make them understand what's going on. So yes, there's going to be a turnaround, but it's not going to be very quick at all.
Okay.
And in terms of numbers, there is absolutely thousands of veterans across Lancashire, but we don't know exactly.
Thing,
absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of them are in employment and they've got they're sustainable and they're happy in doing what they're doing. But there is going to be a large number of those that are street homeless. And now I've linked in with a charity in Burnley who look after the rough sleepers just in Burnley alone.
Right.
There is 20 plus veterans who are either rough sleeping or sofa surfing in Burnley alone. So 11 boroughs in Lancashire, and that's who we're looking after. So you can appreciate if you just put 20 in each one of them, it's a significant amount of veterans.
This is a non-political podcast, and I think to be honest, you can throw the net across any political party, but because we don't look after our veterans well enough. You know, these men and women are potentially making the ultimate sacrifice, and you know, in a country like ours, no one should be homeless, but you know, that's why we're all trying to create these new models, like with my social enterprise and with what you guys are doing to tackle it. But it's not right, is it? You know, and
no, it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, like, say, politically, and yes, things haven't been done right previously, and now there are things in motion. And with anything else, it's going to take time for it to. To be implemented. In this year alone, we've lost 42 veterans, and one recently yesterday. So yes,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Much more needs to get done, and things will happen. Johnny Mercer is an absolutely amazing guy. He's the Office of Veteran Affairs Minister who was newly appointed this year, and he's trying his best to do what he can. And
right.
Likewise, Ben Wallace, who's the Defence Secretary, they're trying to pull out all the stops, but it's going to take time, and I appreciate that. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. But what I've also learnt here is national delivery for me doesn't work that well, not as well as local delivery anyway. So being a local charity stroke CIC, which we are, it has a far greater impact because you're able to then concentrate more specifically on the veterans within your borough, the support that is needed, and therefore have that little bit more of an impact, let's say.
Sure. Okay. Sian, I wonder if I can come back to you, please, because if we could talk about the HQ that you've just exchanged contracts.
I was just going to. Can I show you a picture of it? I've just.
Yeah. Can I?
Am I able to share my screen?
Let me just see if I can.
Like Andy says, it won't do it justice because there's a whole other floor to it that you can't even see, isn't there?
Do you want to try that? Try now. See if you can share that screen.
Yeah. So that's it. Can you see?
There we go. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful building. But like I say, it's actually 14,000 square feet in total.
And this was on the open market, it looks like.
It was on the open market. It had a few sales that fell through, and we snapped it up. In fact, it was under offer when we saw it, wasn't it, Andy? But we snapped it up and we've exchanged and we're completing on Wednesday. So
okay, so there's a question actually from Adina. Hi Andy, but I think it's also can be directed towards you, Sian. What an amazing project, well done. Can I ask, did you purchase the property outright? If so, how? And do you have support staff living on site? I think if that's a really good question, Adina, and thank you for that. I think, Sian, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you're structuring this deal from a property perspective. And then Andy, perhaps you can discuss about the support that's going to be delivered and, whether you'll have people on site, perhaps through your tier one people, I don't know. But let's just talk about the sort of property structuring and how you're funding it and so on, please, Sian.
Sure. I'll stop sharing then, shall I, now we've all seen
Sure,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, so this, I don't know if people know or not, but I'm fairly active in the SAS community and big advocate of SAS pensions.
Again, sorry, Sian, to cut in, but just explain for those maybe that don't know, just a quick 1 minute run through of what a SAS is.
Yeah, sure. It stands for Small Self-Administered Scheme, and it's a type of company pension, also sometimes known as a director's pension. So it's reliant, it's normally attached to your business, so a limited company, and it's for the benefit of the directors, really. So it's a company pension scheme. But what it allows you to do is to make your own investment decisions using your pension pot.
And it's quite a broad choice of sectors that you can invest in. I mean, not residential, but supported living is absolutely an allowable area, isn't it?
That's right. So as unlike, traditional pensions, they're very heavily and almost exclusively invested in stocks and shares. This within SAS, there's all sorts of things you can invest in, including commercial property. And for the purposes of SAS, supported living generally falls under that sort of category. So it makes it a SaaS friendly investment on the whole. So I mean, I've kind of been in this, big advocate of SaaS for a long time, and I'm a SaaS investor myself, but also I borrow from SaaS pensions, because generally within this, if you're a SaaS trustee, you tend to wear two hats. So you can sit on both sides and see both sides. And with regards to this project, this has been fully funded through other people's SaaSes, including a small amount from our SaaS we took as a loan back towards it, but predominantly it's from other SaaS investors.
So essentially what you're saying then is you've got a network of people that you know. In this case, they're people who've got their own SaaS pensions, and they're putting the money in to do the project.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, they're funding it, and I mean, I won't go into too much detail now about it, but it is a very SaaS friendly kind of strategy, really, because for various reasons, and very popular among SaaS trustees, because it's quite a secure and safe investment option. So we had no trouble funding this project.
Okay. It's Mark, who we both know is the sort of the mugshots out there. He can't join the call, unfortunately. He's very involved in the SaaS area. He runs the SaaS Alliance, and many of you I think on the call here already know him. But one of the key things that he talks about with this sort of activity is, yes, you get your return on the investment. Yes, you get the return of your investment as a SaaS trustee, but it's the return on impact as well. It's that sort of slightly softer element, but actually is ever so powerful and ever so important.
Yeah,
I guess your SaaS investors are enjoying the same sort of thing, really. They're getting Absolutely. The return on investment as a commercial return, but at the same time being involved in doing something really good.
Absolutely. And it's just amongst investors in general, I think the whole emphasis is changing towards this. I think, as in society, people generally want to be feeling like they are having an impact, and more and more, I think people are looking to invest in things that do give them that return on impact as well. Definitely.
Okay, so that you're funding it through SaaS investors. You've exchanged contracts now. What's happening between now and completion?
Well, we're sort of we're completing on Wednesday. We've just we've just still got access, so the contractors have been in to finish measuring up, and we've had our capital allowances guy in sort of doing a survey, and we're just kind of making sure we've got all our ducks in a row and we're ready to go, really.
And so what happens after you complete? Is there quite a lot of work to be done in terms of creating the 25 rooms, or
we're fortunate, really, in the sense of it was its last use and its last planning use was it was owned by a housing association, and they used it for a mother and baby hostel.
Oh wow.
So in actual fact, we're doing almost no structural work at all. It's all laid out as we would actually want it. So as Andy mentioned, we've got, I think, 16 ensuite bedrooms, and then we've got about 4 flats.
Okay.
And so the ensuite bedrooms will be the tier 1 housing, the flats will then be tier 2, and multiple offices, that will be training rooms, therapy rooms, and crisis cafe. So
perfect building.
It is. Having said that, it is purely cosmetic, but that's 14,000 square feet of purely cosmetic.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of purely cosmetic, isn't it?
It's quite a lot with a paintbrush,
Yeah.
So we have taken on a main contractor and a project manager who kind of specialises in delivering these supported living projects.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal. It entirely takes all the stress out of it.
I might have to get an introduction from you, Sian, actually, for the one we're doing up in Tameside.
Okay. Well, he's not even done it yet, but he came recommended from Laura, Andy's partner,
right,
and has delivered projects, to her. So he's as of now.
Hands.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, good. So when do you think it will be live and ready to operate?
They've got quite a short time frame. So just to answer that question, so it's going to be staff throughout the day. So there's going to be 5 members of staff on site throughout the day, doing various things. And then it's going to be manned throughout the night as well.
Okay.
So there'll be a member of staff on there to deal with sort of any crisis issues and maintain law and order, for want of a better word. There's obviously going to be a building full of complex mental health needs. So it's going to be fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, great. So when will it be operational, do you think?
So we're opening our doors on the 5th of December. We've got a grand opening. Okay. I've kind of said we need to be done by the 1st of November. Which enables me to mobilise all the staff and then obviously decorate the place in terms of setting it up, getting the beds in there, getting the kitchen set up, getting all the tables and chairs and office equipment and all the other bits and pieces in.
And probably about a million other things that are going to crop up along the way. Yeah. And
to be fair, I'm giving myself a month to do that. It's pretty tight anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But you can't cut that development time down anymore.
It takes as long as it takes, doesn't it? And there'll be things that crop up that you haven't allowed for as well, I'm sure. So that's
absolutely
the way of the world with development. So if somebody wanted to get involved in this sector, I mean, I know, Andy, you said to me earlier before the call, you're inundated at the moment with people sort of knocking on your door, and actually potentially it's distracting or taking your eye off what you need to do, which is deliver the services. And Sian, you've mentioned obviously that you're working with other SAS trustees. Perhaps between you, if anybody who's on the call is interested in getting involved and maybe helping, what should they do?
I think involved with veterans or just supported housing?
Absolutely. Either. But I think because we're talking about veterans, and we're talking about your relationship in terms of delivering services. Sian very obviously has the sort of the property background and the funding background, and obviously you're delivering the services, Andy. So, I mean, I suppose it's probably more a question at Sian. If somebody was wanting to talk to you about perhaps being involved in any future projects that you've got, what should they do?
Yeah, I mean, we work with private investors and SAS trustees in terms of funding projects, and be more than happy to show kind of our previous examples of projects that we've done with Andy.
Okay. What's the best way for it? Maybe if what's your email address, Sian? Could you just?
Oh yeah, I didn't actually put a slide on.
I think for us as well, and obviously we've got this project at the minute, but I'm already being asked. I mean, there's a message in there now. Healthy Roads based in Yorkshire.
David's a good friend of mine.
I'm already being asked now to provide properties everywhere.
Okay.
Because Lancashire's massive.
Yeah.
This building's in East Lancashire in Burnley. So sometimes the barrier of travel as well is quite a significant thing. So, we're looking to get a minibus donated to us so we can reduce that barrier by going and collecting them and bringing them there. But if I had an outreach building somewhere else within Lancashire or indeed Yorkshire, then, I'm more than happy to look at it. Absolutely more than happy to look at it.
Okay. All right. Well, given that you're swamped, Andy, like, so for example, David here has been on the call. Maybe if they just put something in the subject line of an email or something that says, property for good, : and then that maybe sort of might sort of attract your attention more. But also Sian has just shared her email address as well, sian@bridgeheadhomes.co.uk. But it's always, David, thank you for what you've just said. David Johns, in terms of certainly something that we discussed, I think, a couple of weeks ago when you and I had that conversation. Okay, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to try and wrap this up by about 10:30. But if anybody's got any questions at all for the guests, or Sian or Andy, if they feel there's anything that we haven't covered that you particularly want to mention, please just say.
I was just going to say that I am planning definitely with the Burnley project to be doing site visits. So if anyone is local and they want to come and have a little look at the project, and we hopefully do before you know, in the middle and after, and see the progress of it. I'd be really happy to show people around. So you just give me a shout, drop me an email, and, you know, we can arrange that as well.
Good stuff. Sorry, go on, Andy.
No, my screen just flicked off then. It's going to your Q&A screen. Sorry, I just wonder what happened then.
Yeah. Okay.
I think sorry, can I just
yes,
say to Dave,
I've
just sent him a message saying, obviously, just fire us a message by email, and then let's kind of look to work collaboratively and see what's required. Because if it's the funding's already there and it can be set up and it's done, then I can 100%, I am sure, provide the staff to make it happen. Let's have a chat.
No, David's a really good friend of mine, and he lives in Leeds, so we've been in talks, you know, trying to take over the Northwest.
That's my intention. So when we talk about other businesses, it's Healthier Heroes will become national at some point.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
Andy,
I must say, Andy, with your evident drive, it's not an impossibility to see how that might happen. And and I genuinely hope that, you know, even if you only get part way along that goal, it's going to have an enormous impact on so many lives. And it's not just the lives of the people that are in your HQ buildings and the HMOs that you're working with, it's their families as well, isn't it? Of course.
Absolutely.
And then there's also all the wider impact to society, because, you know, if someone is on the streets or doing crime or whatever, it costs so much money out of the taxpayer's purse. But there's also the impact on people's lives, and you're directly making a real impact. And between both of you, you know, I think it's a lovely model. I think you've done tremendously well in such a short space of time. You know, you can kind of see the chemistry between you, the way it works, and it's inspirational, I think, frankly, and it's something, you know, I certainly aspire to in terms of the charities that we work with, and I believe, you know, hopefully people on the call today share that opinion, and I think I speak for everybody in terms of saying, look, I wish you both the very best, and, you know, hope the success that you've got so far continues to snowball.
Thank you very much.
There is another question that's come in. Hi, Andy and Sian. This is from Anil Patel. Hi, Andy and Sian. Can existing HMOs be easily adapted for supported living?
Go on, Sian, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, you know, the properties that we were providing in Wigan, that's what they are. They're HMOs. So yes is the answer. It depends a little bit on what kind of tenants you've got. So obviously, in the veteran community, we have at least one of our veterans has, you know, got a prosthetic limb. So things like that need to be considered. So, you know, do they have a downstairs toilet, and, you know, is it accessible and safe from that point of view? But there are, you know, many different tenant types in supported living, and generally, yes, the answer is yes, as the properties do need to reach HMO standards in terms of safety, but they can be used in supported living.
Right. I think the important thing for me, Dave, as well, is that for like kind of for Sian, for our relationship and the way we work, you know, if I need a property and then we go and, you know, Sian and that goes and finds it, I then come to the property and then say, right, brilliant, this is amazing. Now this is what I need in order to meet the needs and requirements of those people being in that. Yep. And Sian's then able to go away and just make that happen. So that, you know, that's why our relationship, not just that reason, but you know, that's why it works so well. It's just amazing.
Cool.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks ever so much, Sian and Andy, for your time.
Thank you.
The next event will be Friday the 14th of August, because that's when the second Friday lands. The guests will be to be confirmed. They've got a couple of options, but it's just organising people's diaries currently. So you know, we'll let you know in due course. All that's left to say really is, obviously, thank you everybody for taking the time out this morning to come on the event. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found value in it, and thank you for your interaction and questions. And of course, thank you mostly to Sian and Andy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Not at all. Okay, bye for now, everybody.
Thank you.
I always have to remind myself not to press leave at that point.
Yes, I haven't quite finished it yet.
Oh, sorry.